All right, welcome to the Weather Insights live stream coverage of Hurricane Helene. I'm meteorologist Scott Pitney along with meteorologist Jeff Linder, and we are taking a look at the infrared satellite image as this storm continues to organize and head north, already throwing rain bands. Pretty much has Florida covered up right now, but the center still down around Cancun, where they still have a hurricane warning and expecting heavy rains, possible mudslides, and things like that over in western Cuba, as the forward speed is kind of normal, I would say 10 to 12 miles per hour right now. But that is going to change as it approaches Florida, not just in its forward speed, but also in the strength and coverage. So right now, the strength forecast is forecasting this to be a major hurricane by Thursday afternoon, 1 o'clock. And there you see the hurricane warning down there at the tip of the Yucatan Peninsula that includes Cancun. And then that's a tropical storm warning, that blue area west of there. And then the tip of Cuba, which includes Havana, tropical storm warning. And then becoming a major hurricane, hitting that Big Bend area on Thursday, tomorrow. And then just, boy, just a huge coverage there for tropical storm force winds, now including the entire state of South Carolina, getting into North Carolina, Tennessee, of course, all of Georgia. In fact, the southwestern portion of Georgia under a hurricane warning. And a couple of reasons. One, this storm is going to be very strong and very large and very fast moving, Jeff. This is not one to play around with.
No, you can see the current wind field here in orange, and as you can see, you just kind of extrapolate this northward here, and kind of gives you all of your warnings here across the southeast United States. So everything in blue is tropical storm warning. That's winds of sustained winds of 40 miles per hour or greater. Then everything in red is the hurricane warning. That's winds sustained of 75 miles an hour or greater, and we're talking a hurricane inland over south central Georgia. Oh, this is probably near or west of Macon, Georgia, Friday morning at 1 a.m. So landfall somewhere is here on this Big Bend coast of Florida, Apalachicola, maybe over towards St. Mark's and the Tallahassee area, Tallahassee Metro. At this point, I just don't see how the metro area of Tallahassee avoids this. There's still some shifting. If it were to go along the right side of this track, it may be a little bit better for Tallahassee. But boy, it's coming, and this is unprecedented. If you look back to 1851, um, if you look back at 1851, there hasn't been a significant hurricane event of this magnitude in this portion of Florida that impacted the Tallahassee metro area. So Michael a couple years ago, back in 2018, was further west over towards Mexico Beach, and that kind of passed west of Tallahassee. Adelia last year in the eastern portion of the Florida Panhandle here was further to the east and didn't have a lot of impact in Tallahassee. And so they've kind of been split on both sides over the last few years. Unfortunately, this one looks like it's going to come right up and potentially right into that area. And we've been talking about the shifting in the track, and there just continues to be very little change in the
Yeah,
overall track. This is
very
a
consistent.
situation where the steering pattern is very well set, and so there's just not a lot of deviation here in the track. We have a well-defined center now, so it's unlikely we're going to get any sort of center reformation or anything like that. And so it's pretty set in stone that this is going to come up and make landfall here somewhere between Apalachicola, the tip here of the portion of the Florida Panhandle, and over towards maybe St. Mark's or so. And again, this is the model cycle, the consensus for the last several times. Really no change. If anything, maybe a hair to the west. And I did have a question earlier about, why is this not bending off to the right? Why is this not bending off to the east? A lot of our storms, as they come up to the coast, they kind of turn to the east or turn to the right. And this is just not that sort of setup. And so you have this high pressure here off the United States East Coast. This is not allowing this to turn to the right. The
Yep.
wind flow on this high is out of the south, so it's just going to take it right up north. And then we have this unusual cut off upper low here centered over the mid-Mississippi Valley. And so the steering around that is off to the north also. And so it's this channel here, this very narrow channel between this high to the east and this low to the west that's going to capture the hurricane, bring it straight north, and then wrap it into this upper level low. It's gonna upper level low is gonna kind of absorb this hurricane. And I'm gonna step forward here. So this is noon tomorrow. The center of the hurricane, 100 or so, 150 miles so southwest of Tampa. And I'm going to step forward exactly 12 hours to midnight. This
Look at
is
that.
midnight
Yeah.
tomorrow,
Mhm.
midnight Friday morning. And this hurricane goes from 100 miles southwest of Tampa to south central Georgia in 12 hours. And if you step ahead another 12 hours to noon on Friday, this thing is up here into Kentucky. So we're talking moving southwest of Tampa to Kentucky in a 24-hour period. And that is the reason why we're going to see such dramatic impacts really far inland. You know,
Yeah.
Atlanta, Metro Atlanta up here, the entire state of Georgia. This is big wind that's going to come up here. Not only just the forward motion, but this big wind field is coming in. This has a little bit of the Michael Opal 1995, Michael 2018 feeling here with an accelerating significant hurricane event. Opal 95 brought hurricane force wind gusts to Atlanta. It wouldn't totally surprise me if you had hurricane force wind gusts to northern Georgia Friday morning before sunrise. So way, way, way inland. Get ready.
Yeah. Had one question. This came over email about Georgia. How bad will it flood in Georgia? And interesting question there. And there it is right there. Pretty much confine most of the precipitation to the west, northwest, and northern part of Georgia. And a lot of that has, that's that Appalachian mountain chain there that where you can get heavy runoff, mudslides, those type of things. And if you look at that area just east of Chattanooga, south of Knoxville, that's a foot of rain. But as you know, Jeff, these hurricanes, you can have these bands set up, and this is just a model, so it's not not necessarily going to be in that specific spot, but any of these bands can set up, especially and you notice on the track how this thing just stalls out when it gets wrapped into this other low, and you can see 20+ inch rainfalls in that area.
Yeah, I think we have a couple big disasters unfolding here. One is our coastal
Yep.
disaster that's going to happen down here in Appalachia Bay. This, and we'll get to storm surge in a minute, but this is going to be a horrible wind event up through the Florida Panhandle, Tallahassee, and then up to southwest and south central Georgia. The inland flood threat, the freshwater flood threat that's going to come after landfall, is going to be very, very significant. So we have an old frontal boundary laying through here, which is going to help focus all of this moisture and rainfall. And then on top of that, you have the lift from the southern Appalachians here, the mountains. And so you put all that together, and it's going to kind of wring out this tropical moisture as it comes up into the southern Appalachians. And widespread amounts of 8 to 12 inches. Everything you see in the orange there is upwards of a foot. You start talking in the red, far northeastern Georgia up into West North Carolina, Asheville, those areas. You're talking 12 to 16 inches. Wouldn't totally be surprised, like you said, to get 2 feet here somewhere. That's
Yeah.
that's certainly on the table. Then you drop that in those mountain areas, and you're gonna get those flash floods down those creeks and ravines, and even into the rivers. And this is going to be one of those things that happens after all the action, if you will, takes place down here on the coast. So this will be, Friday. Well, we're gonna get rain up all in here tomorrow along the front, and then this will really get going Friday and Friday night, maybe even continuing into Saturday. But you put all of this moisture, it's been raining here, it's been raining here today, and you continue to saturate the ground, and you bring those 50, 60, even maybe 70-mile-an-hour winds across that. The amount of damage to trees and power lines is going to be substantial. We're talking Atlanta, possibly Chattanooga, over towards Asheville, maybe even Knoxville. I mean, the amount of power outages that are going to happen here from Florida up into the Southern Appalachians is going to be in the millions. of customers as this comes inland. It's just really the perfect setup for a lot of big issues on multiple fronts: rainfall, wind, and storm surge. We'll get to in a second.
Yeah, tons of trees in that area. And I did have a question along those lines. I know we're going to get to the wind and so forth. But South Carolina, Ivy asks about will they have power outages in South Carolina? And there you go. There's the wind field. This is the percentage chance of tropical storm force winds. And South Carolina is in that green area, which is anywhere from 5 to 20% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds. And anytime you have tropical storm force winds, there is a possibility of power outages.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is the entire state's under the tropical storm warning. So again, that's potentially sustained winds of 40 miles an hour. I think if you're going to get, power outages and any sort of tree damage, it's probably going to be in the western part of the state,
Yeah.
upstate portion of South Carolina. Up here in the higher terrain, you can catch some wind, and maybe down along the coast with the wind coming in off the water. Interior areas, could you get gusts? Yeah. I don't think it's going to be horrible in South Carolina, but there could definitely be some isolated and sporadic power outages, some trees down here and there, and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So I know one of the things, the big thing here we got to talk about is the water level on the coast, is the storm
Yeah.
surge, and this is this is looking like a really big event. This is by far going to be a record event up here in Appalachia Bay. I think the record is March '93, the superstorm. It's actually not a hurricane event. That just goes to show you again how rare it is to get hurricane type big hurricane events up here in the northeast portion of the Gulf Coast. And so it's actually a winter mid latitude storm that produced a big surge up here in 1993. And so we're talking 15 to 20 feet above the ground, above normally dry ground here at the head of Appalachia Bay. So from east of Apalachicola all the way around over towards the Cedar Key area, the Horseshoe Beach and Keaton Beach and some other ones over here on the east side of the bay. This is big. You're talking into the second story, into the second floor of homes. Anything on the ground is gone. I'll just get it out there how it is. I mean,
Yeah.
if your house is 9 feet tall, we're talking 10 feet of water over the top of that. We're talking waves on that.
Yeah,
Anything
it's
on
just
the
getting pounded with
yeah.
waves too. That's the thing. It's just, you put the wind behind that surge and it's just constantly getting pounded with waves. And that water's so powerful, it doesn't take much.
Yeah, this is really unsurvivable. I know
Yeah.
there's some hesitation sometimes to use that wording, but you're talking 15 to 20 feet with wave action on top of it, beating away at the structures. Their entire blocks, entire towns are going to be destroyed, washed away, infrastructure gone with this type of storm surge up here. Again, this is going to be a devastating, catastrophic event for this area. And we can look a little bit at kind of the inundation mapping if this is going to work. And I know the Hurricane Center website's been having some issues here with this, but you can see everything here in red from south of Tallahassee, Apalachicola over here, over towards St. Mark's, Florida here, and then down here along the eastern shore of Appalachia Bay over towards Cedar Key. Everything you see in red is above 9 feet, and a lot of this is going to be over 15 feet potentially. And
Mhm.
running up the rivers and the bayous and the creeks over here, so you can see the inundation getting way inland.
Yeah.
You're talking potentially miles inland, and this is why we have the all of the mandatory evacuations, and this is very, very serious mandatory evacuations. This is not Adelia. This is not Debbie that you had up here just a month ago. This is a very, very serious situation. A lot of people stayed for Adelia. A lot of people stayed in this area for Debbie. This is a whole different ball game. It's not even on the same playing field as those
You need to get
storms.
out. Yeah.
And the water level rise and the damage that's coming for those areas is going to be very significant. And so definitely heed those evacuation orders. I'm trying to pull it up here, but I don't know, the map's not working. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's a list of them. Yeah. See if I can While you're working on that, Jeff, Tyler asks, will there be tornadoes or yeah, will there be tornadoes? Well, with any hurricane, there's always a threat of tornadoes. Usually, on the eastern side of the eye, northeastern side favors tornadoes. So yes, Tyler, there will be tornadoes. Where they'll occur exactly, and that type of thing is uncertain. But this thing's going to have enough wind by itself without any tornadoes that the preparations and warnings and all that are already in place for that. So yeah, there'll be tornadoes, but you're going to have very strong hurricane force winds on the east and northeast quadrants of this storm. There's the map.
Yeah, here's the map we finally got up. So
Yeah.
everything you see in red here, all the counties are mandatory evacuations, recommendations. Even well inland, and this is probably more for your manufactured homes or substandard type structures up in this area. This is almost all wind up here. But everything down here you see on the coast is mandatory for that coastal storm surge. And we're talking even down here in Tampa Bay. We didn't talk much about Tampa Bay. We can go down and talk a little bit about that. I mean, this is going to be,
8 or 10 feet. Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be anywhere from 3 to maybe 6 feet in Tampa Bay, Clearwater. Everything you see in orange is up to 6 feet. We've been able to pull back a little bit on this with the storm a little bit further offshore, but you're still going to,
Mm.
as the storm passes to the west, you're still going to get that southwesterly wind that's going to push that water up in here and kind of trap it.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be inundation here. Is it going to be as horrible as it is up in Appalachia Bay? No. But there will be impacts here. There will be flooding. There will likely be some structures flooded. Here's downtown Tampa right here, and we're talking potentially up to 3 feet of inundation in and around downtown Tampa. MacDill Air Force Base down here. You can see flooding on the south side of that. And then out here on the beachfront, Clearwater over here, this is very low lying. There's not a lot of relief. And so some of this may go completely under. And out here on the beachfront, you're going to get that big Gulf of Mexico wave action also that's going to come up to the coast. So not only do you have the storm surge itself, but you have that big wave action that's going to come up and strike the coast and the any protective seawalls or anything like that they have here is going to take a beating. So this isn't going to be the big one for Tampa, but there's going to be impacts here. There is going to be storm surge flooding. There's going to be 50, 60 mile an hour winds tomorrow night. And there's going to be heavy rains and squalls and stuff like that. So it's not completely a walk in the park here in the metro area, but the worst of this is going to be up here north in Appalachia Bay.
Yeah. Zach asks from Georgia asks what should they be doing to prepare for hurricane force winds in Georgia? It's an interesting question because you don't really get hurricane force winds unless it's severe thunderstorms, things like that in the center of Georgia. And the good thing is that you do have time to prepare. With severe thunderstorms, tornadoes, and things, you don't really have all this time to prepare. But you certainly want to bring loose objects in, make sure that you have supplies on hand, and I can't imagine to be any mandatory evacuations. So shelter in place and prepare for potentially long-term power outages. And as we've talked about before, and as we saw with Beryl too, there are fatalities after the storm passes through, and you don't want to get out, and everybody's curious. They want to look around, they want to check on their neighbors and that type of stuff. But there's down power lines, there's down limbs. People are getting chainsaws out and doing unsafe things sometimes. So shelter in place through the storm and after the storm. If you don't, I also recommend a NOAA weather radio too. I've got one. What I like about it is if there are cell phone towers down or cell phone transmissions interrupted, you can get emergency information from a NOAA weather radio. And that might be your only source of information with power outages and cell phones down. So not everybody has time to get one, but just throwing that out there for later on. It's a good idea to have one, whether you're in a hurricane area or not. So, but yeah, you can do some things now to prepare for hurricane force winds, even if you're in the middle of Georgia.
Yeah, it's probably a tree and power line situation up there in central and northern Georgia. With the wind aspect, I don't think you're gonna get a lot of structure damage in northern Georgia, Atlanta, but definitely in the red area and the hurricane warning area down here, Macon and south of that. Let's go sweep over to Google real quick and just kind of look at this for a second. So, this is going to come up through Tallahassee, so Albany, Georgia, Valdosta, getting up towards Columbus and Macon.
Mhm.
This kind of area right here, if you kind of drew a rectangle through here, that's going to be ground zero. And so those areas, a lot of tree damage, a lot of power line infrastructure damage, power outages. You could get some structure damage in here, some fences blown down, some roof shingles blown off. Obviously the trampolines,
Yeah,
they need to be secured. They like to blow around.
yeah.
But
Turn them upside down if you can.
yeah, this area through here in southwest Georgia, a lot of the same areas that got hit really hard with Michael back in 18 as this came up are going to get hit hard again. And then further north, I mean, if you kind of drew a line here from
Hmm.
Tallahassee to Albany, west of Macon, and then straight up through Atlanta, that's kind of how this is going to go.
Yeah.
And like I said, I wouldn't be totally surprised if you got some hurricane force wind gusts 70, 75 miles an hour in metro Atlanta and even up here in northern Georgia in some of this higher terrain area. You have the mountains, the wind increases with height. So you can get some of those higher gusts up there and have a lot of trees and tree damage up in this area. So I think the legacy potentially here, the big surge in Appalachia Bay, the big rains potentially in the southern Appalachians and flash flooding, inland flood threat, and then just the power outages, the widespread nature of the power outages, and the infrastructure, the trees that are going to come down over. It's a huge area. If you think back to Michael in 18, it was a powerful hurricane, but it was a relatively small wind field. We're
Wow.
talking 30, 35 miles across, where it kind of bulldozed through. This thing's coming up here as one of the larger storms in the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, it's going to be on par with Ike to some
Yeah.
degree here. So, I mean, this is a massive, massive wind field, and you just start thinking about recovery and power crews and all that kind of stuff. Just the amount of miles that they're going to have to cover with damage and trees down and poles knocked over and stuff like that. It's a daunting task coming to the Southeast United States as we get into Friday and this weekend, and this is going to be a long recovery. I can tell you right now, this is not something in Tallahassee or Southern Georgia you're going to bounce back from in 4 or 5 days. And if we're talking down there in Appalachia Bay, this is life altering. This is going to change people's lives forever down there in that storm surge area, maybe even in Tallahassee too. If you take that 130-mile-an-hour winds and bring it up across the metro area, it is going to be an absolutely devastating hurricane impact for that area.
Yeah. And it's a good segue for this next question from Helen. She's asking, how long will it take for the storm surge to recede? And well, the storm surge will start to recede once the eye pass and the wind stops blowing the water inland. But just because it's receding, that doesn't mean you can jump back in there. This area is going to be uninhabitable for a while. So Helen, if you're planning on, if you're asking that in terms of I want to get back into my house or check on something as soon as I can, don't plan on doing that anytime soon. Emergency crews need to get in there and do their thing. But it does recede relatively quickly after the storm passes.
Yeah, I think the surge will come out fairly quickly on Friday as the winds swing around. I mean the by noon Friday the storm's in northern Georgia,
Thanks.
so it's well
Yeah,
past the coast at that point. So,
incredible.
but I think the question is, what does the coast look like
Yeah,
Friday? Not so much when the water goes away. I just I can't stress enough that the destruction on the coast from the storm surge is going to be complete. There's not going to be a lot left down there in those coastal areas on the north side and the head of Appalachia Bay. This is going to be entire blocks of homes, entire areas of structure gone. They will not exist anymore. We've seen this before. Bolivar with Hurricane Ike. We saw this with
Mhm.
Katrina on the Mississippi coast. We saw this at Mexico Beach with Hurricane Michael. We saw this 2 years ago in Southwest Florida with Hurricane Ian. That is the reality of what's coming to the Florida Big Bend area and that Appalachia Bay. There's not going to be a lot left. So the big question is not so much when the water goes away; it's what am I going to be able to even get back to? And
Right.
you also have to remember that the roadway infrastructure is going to take a big hit here.
Yeah.
The roads may be gone, the bridges may be washed out, the bridges may be completely gone, like what we saw with Ian and Sanibel Island. The causeway was destroyed. That is certainly on the table with this level of surge.
Yeah. Yeah. Just stay out. I remember those images with Ike on Bolivar. Just uh, been going to that beach for many years, and just it was so strange just to look at almost every structure gone, maybe three buildings or something like that remaining, and I'm not even sure how they survived. But yeah, as you said, Jeff, that's what they're in store for there. So, all right, well, appreciate everybody um, participating in the live stream. Appreciate the questions. We'll do this again tomorrow. We'll have another briefing in the morning, and then likely have another live stream during the event tomorrow evening as well. So stay in touch with us for that. Of course, you can do that by staying in touch and subscribing to the Weather Insights YouTube channel. Subscribe and be sure to enable those notifications so that you can stay informed and know when we post a new video or when we are live streaming. Jeff, great stuff as always. Thank you very much.